I'm endlessly fascinated and curious about the world around us, about business, about politics, about the arts, about culture, developments, social issues, and the people. Most importantly, about the people that are shaping our future. Every night, I get the opportunity to have conversations, to dive into conversations with thought leaders, with change makers, entrepreneurs, politicians, and everyday heroes who unpack the ideas and stories that I think matter to all of us. What's the future of our economy? What's the future of our country? How do we build stronger communities? What can we learn from music, theater, sports, politics, the arts? How does policy shape our real lives? What does leadership look like, real leadership in today's environment? If it's interesting and relevant and topical and we're talking about it, you'll hear about it here at 6 o'clock on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I want to have real conversations, in-depth conversations. These are ideas we're sharing. This is the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Thanks for joining me. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got Greg Vezina, the president of Hydrofuel Inc., with us tonight because I think that it's interesting that, climate change and alternative energy and where the world is going is sort of completely out of favor right now, given what Donald Trump is saying about climate change being a hoax. But yet, what's happening is that the whole world, other than the United States and maybe at times Canada, seems to be still thinking about these issues and thinking about lowering carbon emissions, etc. And so I thought it would be great to check in with the gentleman who I know who's really focused on this and frankly has opinions on both sides of this issue at different times in regards to hydrocarbons and the use of them and how we deal with climate change, etc. And Greg Vezina is doing this because he's CEO of a company in this area. Greg Vezina, welcome to the show.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on, Brian.
My pleasure. So tell me, where is Hydrofuel today? You've got some really positive news recently. Is that correct?
Yes, we have two technologies. One technology we developed is called micro ammonia production system. It replaces the Haber synthesis method for making ammonia, for combining hydrogen and nitrogen. Uses about a half the energy. That's very big because ammonia is very, very important as a fertilizer. But now we're starting to realize that ammonia is a really good carrier for hydrogen. So on the one hand, we have a great technology that helps us produce fertilizer and will allow us to store and transport huge amounts of hydrogen that it appears are going to be available from underground. It's called white hydrogen, and it's basically low carbon, very, very low carbon gas. And it appears there are thousands of years worth of that hydrogen on Earth, and they're drilling for it and they're finding it. And if they don't have a factory that can use it where the pipe comes out of the ground, then they've got to store it. And the math and science is real simple. You lose 40% of the energy in hydrogen storing it, just compressing or liquefying it and storing it. And then you got to transport it, et cetera, et cetera. If you convert it to ammonia, you can do it for a net of as little as 20%, and you can crack it for another 10. And you can transport ammonia in existing natural gas pipelines and carry twice as much hydrogen in ammonia as you can in natural gas. So one side of our business is the technology of developing low-cost ammonia for hydrogen storage. And we do that based on a patent out of Georgia Tech we licensed for micro ammonia production system electrochemically. And it can use renewable electricity to do it, so it's totally green. It's also interruptible, so you can only run it, when the sun is shining if you have to. So that's a very important business.
Okay, so let's take a step back for a second because this sounds really kind of interesting. But let's please explain to me and to everyone else what we're talking about. So why the benefit of hydrogen and ammonia? I read a book about, I think it was called The Hydrogen Future at one point in time. And, lots of people have heard about Ballard Systems and other companies that are trying to create hydrogen cars. I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the reason why hydrogen and ammonia are potential attractive technologies to work on is they don't have hydrocarbons in them, and so therefore there aren't carbon emissions. Is that correct?
Yes, but the discussion is not limited to that, and we'll get into it more later. But that's really part of the problem. Problem is we're focusing on little parts of the chain, and we're not looking at the whole chain. But you are correct. Hydrogen, hydrocarbons are hydrogen and carbon, and when you burn the hydrogen and carbon, you use the energy in the hydrogen, and you emit the carbon. So the notion of having hydrogen without carbon is simple science. The problem is you get into what's called physics. While the physics of hydrogen are very, very difficult compared to the physics of ammonia. It's much easier to store and transport hydrogen in ammonia.
Okay, so you said that you lose 40% of the energy in hydrogen when you transport it. Why?
No, you compress and liquefy it. It takes that much energy. It's minus 290 C, okay, or it's 10,000 psi. To take it to that state, it takes a massive amount of energy. Whereas to convert it to ammonia, it takes half. And it's just, again, simple physics.
So you can convert hydrogen into ammonia for 20% of the energy, half of the energy it takes to compress hydrogen, and then you can transport ammonia?
Yes, there are thousands, tens of thousands of miles of ammonia pipelines on this earth, all through Russia to Europe, and one out right up the middle of the United States. And ammonia, although it's caustic, it's actually technically not toxic. Water is toxic, you drink enough of it. Ammonia is caustic, it'll cause a chemical burn, but it's not classified as a flammable gas. And ammonia has an enviable safety record. Yes, people have died, and yes, people have been injured, but nowhere near to the percentage per ton mile of fuel that you move with ammonia as compared to a hydrocarbon. So, I mean, as I said earlier, you can move more hydrogen in ammonia in a natural gas pipeline than you can hydrogen in natural gas.
I thought I heard about, plants in Texas blowing up with ammonia.
No, you heard about a plant that blew up not with ammonium nitrate, which was stored improperly. That is a combination of nitrogen and hydrogen like TNT, okay, and carbon. However, no, the two large ammonia tanks that were in the middle of that plant, two 50,000 gallon tanks, boiled for 3 days, never exploded. It's not the ammonia that did that. It's the ammonium nitrate, and they were charged and convicted and went to jail for illegal storage and handling. Ammonia is the safest chemical gas, manufactured gas in the world. It's also the second largest manufactured chemical in the world. So, we produce 200 million tons a year right now, and we use about 80, maybe 90% of it for fertilizer. There's no storage and handling and transportation issues with ammonia compared to any other fuel. What you've got to look at, as I said earlier, is look at the big picture. So the big picture is, for example, until Donald Trump killed it a few weeks ago, the whole global marine industry was going to get off bunker oil and by 2030 go to ammonia blends or 100% ammonia. They're building ammonia ships, actual ships, hundreds of millions of dollars, powered by ammonia to transport ocean freight. Now, that is going to continue regardless of what happened in the United States. The other places where they're looking at using ammonia around the world is in co-firing with coal to substantially reduce the emissions from hydrocarbons, because you can use the ammonia as an assist pre-combustion and post-combustion to lower your emissions. Now, these are places where you're talking about very, very, very big emission numbers, 10%, 11%. You're talking a big hit on the global emissions. Converting the family car to ammonia, probably not going to happen first. There's lots of other places we could use it.
You could convert a family car to ammonia? Seriously? So, I think lots of us have seen, these white tanks at farms that store ammonia for fertilizer. But what you're saying is ammonia What? Is it burnt like natural gas or is it burnt like oil?
It's fuel. So yeah, I converted a car in 1981 and drove it across Canada and arrived on Parliament Hill on Constitution Day with the Governor General showing an ammonia car. And it's on our website, nh3fuel.com. Look, when Greta says we can get off oil by 2050, I converted a car to run ammonia 45 years ago.
And that
Within 5
ammonia,
years, we'll have ships running on it.
and that
That took
ammonia,
50 years.
and that ammonia doesn't have any hydrocarbons in it.
No, that's the beauty of it. It is the key chemical advantage of hydrogen ammonia is they are what's called an energy currency. An energy currency is something that is made from electricity and can be converted back into electricity. Can't do that with nuclear. Can't do that with oil. You can't do that with renewables, but you can with ammonia. So ammonia essentially is liquid electricity. And again, people, lobbyists express their point of view. And then there's those of us that sit in the middle with both sides and go, and get to the facts.
But you said that there's
the facts and the utilization of pipelines versus electricity lines. The whole notion of building a power grid across Canada is economic suicide. You can move 9 times as much energy in a pipeline as gas, let alone as oil, than you can in a transmission line. A pipeline is buried below ground. It has less maintenance. A transmission line is above ground, and we'd have to build 10 times as many transmission lines across Canada to move the same energy from pipelines. So again, hydrogen is the key, but utilizing hydrogen is a problem because hydrogen itself likes to be snowflakes. It's the least dense gas known to man. Whereas ammonia, you can store more hydrogen in ammonia than you can in any other way except hydrocarbons.
I think this is interesting that you're commenting that that power lines are 1/10 as efficient in transferring energy as ammonia pipelines would be. I've also understood that pipelines, transmission towers lose energy over distance, which is something I didn't understand before. Is that correct? That they actually you lose energy as you ship it over distance?
There are 2 types of loss. There's actually 3 types of losses. Okay, there's transportation losses in the line. Depending on how far you go, they get big or small. There's distribution losses because you have to fill up this giant grid and have electricity available all the time. But there's currency losses. You can't transport AC power hundreds of miles. You lose 80% of it. You have to convert it to DC power. So here's your losses. AC to DC to AC, 10%. Transportation, 2 to 5%. Distribution, 2 to 5%. At best case, you're blowing 15% of the energy just that way. Now, wait a minute, we're not done. What's the efficiency of the electricity generated at the power plant at the beginning or the end? It's exactly the same. So if you can generate the power at the end with less losses, then you absolutely should. You're not creating or increasing emissions using a pipeline. All you're doing is transferring the net weight or the life cycle costs to where they belong, which is the lowest point.
This is fascinating. Greg, this is going to sound like a stupid question, but I really wonder if you're losing electricity over distance on a power line, where does the electricity go? Just into the air?
Yeah, actually, yes. It's heat that's lost on the hydro lines. And as they get heavier, you'll see the reason the hydro lines bow like this is the weight of the heat, the electricity, the molecules being released. It's very, very interesting. I mean, look, hydro and electricity is a very good technology in many places. And it's also a very bad technology in many places. As with anything, Brian, there's trade-offs. There's good and bad. And the idea is to sort of balance things out. My argument for the last 45 years is Can we please have some grade 9 math and science students do the numbers? Because they're not conflicted. They will say that so much pollution is created in a barrel of oil from drilling to end use. Life cycle. They will say so much pollution is created by a windmill from beginning to use. They'll also look at the tactic economics and say, but we have 1,000 years of hydrogen in the ground. So the pollution we're getting from it is refining and utilization, upstream, midstream, downstream. Okay. When renewables, they last 15 years. And if we want to replace base load, we need 3 to 1. So now it's a 5-year build. Every 5 years, we have to replace the total energy capacity of fossil fuels. Well, wait a minute, there's some math involved here. 90% of the world's energy is provided by 13 countries. 83% of that is fossil. How are you going to replace that with power lines and windmills? You cannot. It is mathematically and physically impossible unless we take about 30% of the GDP and we spend it doing that alone and nothing else. Okay? And the global GDP is 100 trillion a year, and energy and chemicals are 10 trillion. And we've spent, oh God, $200 trillion in the last 150 years building this oil and gas infrastructure, in particular the midstream. If we can improve production, clean it up, and we can clean up end use, we've eliminated 95% of the emissions. And now we're in the area talking about the second technology we've developed.
Okay, well, let's not go there yet. Let's take a break for some messages and come back with Greg Vezina, the CEO of a Canadian company, Hydrofuel, that's got some interesting technology on converting hydrogen into ammonia, which he says is an energy currency. Sounds fascinating. We're going to take a break. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got Greg Vezina with us tonight. He is the CEO of a Canadian company called Hydrofuel, which he says has got two interesting technologies. One that we've just chatted about, which is a technology to convert hydrogen into ammonia. And he says that hydrogen and ammonia are energy currencies, but ammonia is a far better energy currency because it takes 40% of the energy in hydrogen to convert it into something that is liquefied such that you can ship it through a pipeline. I liked his analogy. He said hydrogen wants to be a snowflake. It wants to just sort of fly away. But it takes 20% of the energy in hydrogen to convert it into ammonia. And then you can transport a lot more ammonia by way of a natural gas pipeline to produce energy in the end. And you can use electricity to convert it at the beginning of the cycle, and you can convert it back into to electricity at the end of the cycle. So it sounds fascinating. I got to ask you one question before we go on to the second technology, Greg, if I could. You said that there's 1,000 years of hydrogen in the earth. So is hydrogen a naturally occurring something or other? Is ammonia a naturally occurring element? Or do we have to actually create ammonia from hydrogen?
They're both naturally occurring, but yes, you have to create ammonia from hydrogen. And yes, in the last 5 years, we've really confirmed this. We found out that there are massive supplies of hydrogen, but deep in the ground, that are created from leaching out of rock and water, and it creates hydrogen. And we're talking, I mean, there's a find alone in Europe, somewhere in France, I think, announced in the last month, that is equivalent, that one find alone, to the total global energy demand. So
how does one mine or get hydrogen out of the earth?
The oil and gas boys are all over this because it's essentially the same deep drilling technologies that are used in the oil and gas business. It's interesting because they really do. I mean, they're confirming, they're drilling for these finds. When they start pulling these things up, You're talking about a massive change in the supply of energy, and it appears that this stuff is available all over the world. We're not going to have to worry about buying it from 12 or 13 countries. But as with any energy transition, it is going to take time. Okay, and people understand how big the energy industry is. It will probably take 20 years for this technology to get any substantial market share because of the investment, the time. However, we're going to keep burning or using fossil fuels at least for the next 50 years and probably longer. And the reason is simply the economics. It's cheaper to use those than it is to replace them. And that's just the math. Now, as soon as it becomes cheaper not to use those, that'll happen. Except what happens when someone comes up with a technology to crack the carbon out of hydrocarbons or to eliminate burning hydrocarbons to create heat and electricity for refining and use light to get carbon as a commodity that's worth money and hydrogen as a byproduct. And then in end use, you got a photoreactor in your truck and the hydrocarbon comes in and it turns into pure hydrogen and the engine runs on hydrogen. And they're building hydrogen compatible engines all over the world today. JCB has got them in every piece of industrial and construction equipment they produce. They're certified and they're selling them in Europe and so on. So now all of a sudden, your hydrocarbon that you were used to burn, you're burning pure hydrogen, you're creating a carbon powder. Now, the interesting thing is...
Hold it. So you're talking about in a car,
Yep.
you don't burn the hydrocarbon, you burn the hydrogen out of the hydrocarbon, and what? You end up with a carbon powder left over?
Yep. And then when you go fill up your car, instead of paying them for death blue for an aftermarket ammonia, urea-based technology to reduce your nitrous oxide emissions, all of a sudden they're going to pay you for that carbon you made in your vehicle because you made it cheaper than they can make it in a factory in China and ship it over here.
What do we use that carbon for?
Oh, carbon is used for everything. In manufacturing, the carbon market is absolutely massive.
So the problem isn't the creation of carbon, it's the burning of carbon and putting it into the climate, into the air.
It's the combustion of hydrocarbon for upstream for refining and production of chemicals where you need heat or electricity. And it's the burning of hydrocarbon in utilization applications in engines and generators and factories. And that's the Greens say that midstream, which is your distribution, is about 7% of global emissions. The industry says it's 3%. Let's say it's 5%. We can eliminate 95% of the carbon emissions that come from refining and manufacturing and end use with sunlight. Now, how is a wind generator going to compete with that? It can't. And this is, again, part of the problem we have with the 17-year chain it takes to go from a lab when you invent something to a marketplace, while your government subsidizes your competitors to keep you out of business.
Okay, so sorry, you've lost me. So what's sunlight got to do this? Are you talking about your second technology or something to do with solar or what?
The photochemical technology we developed with the University of Toronto just won the Royal Society of Chemistry Horizon Award for New Inventions. We've created a brand new science. We've created the science of using light, in particular LEDs, so we can run 24/7. We don't have to just run in the daytime, to split hydrogen, ammonia, hydrogen, hydrocarbons into small molecules, into their original constituents. And depending on the feedstock you use, it determines what you get out. For example, the Horizon Award was based on the technology we developed to take methane, turn it to ethane, turn it to ethane, turn it to ethylene. We now use light to make plastic. Zero emissions. Dirtiest chemical in the world. Biggest polluter in the world. Plastic. So we can eliminate the emissions from the production of plastic. That's $500 billion a year business. Ammonia is $500 billion a year around 2030. So there's $1 trillion a year market right there. But that's just, in photochemistry, that's just plastics. What about refining petrochemicals? That's a $4 trillion a year business. Sorry, a $1 trillion a year
So
business.
explain to me, if you could, how do you use sunlight to break hydrocarbons or hydrogen or ammonia into its component pieces?
You create a photoreactor. This is something that holds your input feedstock and holds a catalyst which causes a chemical change. The light shines on the catalyst. You have an input feedstock. The feedstock is broken apart. Out of it comes a different chemical depending on your feedstock. There are feedstocks you can use, for example, where you get hydrogen and carbon nanotubes. Carbon nanocells for $6,000 a kilo. We did a technical economic analysis with the carbon nano only selling for $2,000 a kilo. The hydrogen cost as a byproduct of that industrial process is 9 cents a kilo. The retail price, the wholesale price, manufacturing price in North America is $9 a kilo. So the value of the commodity.
So you're telling me that you can create hydrogen for 9 cents a kilo when it sells for $9 a kilo?
Yes. Yes. And this is proven by the Royal Society and Nature. This is a proven technology.
That's a 99% reduction. That's your 1% of the prior cost.
No, 1/1000. $9. Sorry, you're right. $9.09. 1/100th. Correct.
That's incredible.
Yep, it sure is.
So, like, what's the future for this technology and for hydrofuel?
Well, as I said, the challenge is to go through that 17-year window from I've invented something in the lab to you can pull up to your gas station and get it, right? There's a very long road there. So what happens is business is business, right? And industry will go where the biggest profits are. So industry will develop this technology where they can get the biggest subsidies. Same as every other thing we do.
You need subsidies.
No, you don't. But their competitors are getting subsidized. So you're competing with ethanol, which gets a subsidy, which only contains 75% of the energy in it that was in the diesel fuel and fertilizer to make it. And you're replacing a hydrocarbon with a hydrocarbon. And our politicians say this is green and this is helping us. You want to cut carbon emissions by 25%? Outlaw ethanol, make it illegal. Pay your farmers to make food instead of fuel. The same thing as renewable natural gas. What are they doing? They're stripping the natural gas off garbage dumps. They're leaving everything else, all the biomass, everything. And they're saying, oh, this is green. Give me a subsidy. And our good politicians are right there handing out our money as fast as we can. What is Canada going to do with this? What are they called? I forget what they call it. Our moonshot projects for Canada. They're not doing a technological economic analysis. They're not doing a life cycle analysis. They're not looking at the 10, 15, 20, 25, 30-year impact of this stuff.
Okay, so hold it. I don't understand. What's wrong with taking natural gas out of garbage? I understand that garbage in a garbage dump creates either natural gas or methane naturally, and you got to do something with it. And so therefore creating natural gas out of it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, if you ignore basic math and science, it does. Sure it does. If you watch Bloomberg, and read the Globe and Mail.
So why does it not tell me why? Like what's left over?
Well, here's some facts. Let's give you a fact.
Okay,
give you
please
a
do.
nice fact about garbage. Okay. Washington, D.C., 6 years ago, built the first waste to fertilizer garbage plant in North America. They took $130 million negative cost and turned it into a $30 million a year profit. It was so successful that the 5 states around DC bought licenses to the technology to build 5 more of these things around Washington. Washington will have taken $130 million negative cost and turned it into a $180 million profit. Now, that's the first time this technology ever hit North America, Brian. But there are 100 of these plants. They've been built all over Europe and all around the world for 30 years. See, in North America, we don't look at cost. Everything is a waste. And then we don't care about the waste. That's somebody else's problem. In most economies, you actually have to look at all the costs. And what's happening to us is we're getting the bills. We're starting to wake up.
I don't understand, Greg. If they turned 130 million negative cost into this huge profit, that was a smart thing for them to do.
Yeah. So why haven't we done this in Canada? And why weren't we doing it for the last 40 years? Why everybody else was doing it?
I don't know. You tell me. Why?
We didn't subsidize it. That's all. We didn't let them get their snout into the feed bag.
Okay, so
if you let industry get their snout into the feed bag, they'll do stuff. Brian, look, off topic, and this is a classic example. 3P partnerships. You and I have a fundamental mathematic disagreement on this. There's not been a 3P in the last 50 years, ever, anywhere in the world, where working with the private sector didn't cost twice as much over the life of the project. The reason is very simple. Governments borrow money at 2%, private sector 12%. Government doesn't need a profit, private sector needs a 12% profit. Over 30 years, it's double the cost of the project. It's exactly the same thing in energy. If you're going to pay me to do it, I'm going to do it. And if you're not going to pay me to do it, I'm not going to do it because you're paying somebody else. I've said for 40 years, we need a real price on all pollution, not just carbon. We need the life cycle price of what we do in it. And then we need the government to go back like this and give away trophies, not money. Okay? We need to let free enterprise do what free enterprise will do, which is solve problems and make money, not create problems to make money. And that's fundamentally what's happening around the world. And Canada right now is in a very dangerous position because we're no longer going to get technology from the United States free. And we've been getting technology out of the U.S. military for nothing, for years, all of U.S. NASA and all the rest of it. That's gone. But here's the most important point. The new oil is science. Major paper just came out a few weeks ago on all the greatest achievements in science are coming from where? University students and postdocs. In those 4, 5, 6 years they're in a university, from the day they go in the door and they don't know nothing until their second year as a postdoc after graduating, they invent 90% of the new inventions. Why? Because they hadn't been told you can't do that yet. And this is true. And so here we have a huge brain drain from the United States. The universities are emptying the professors and the brightest, and they're running as fast as they can for the exits. And we stop immigration, stop foreign students. Are you nuts? We should invite them all in, all of them. Bring 1 million of them in. You know why? Because they will give us the knowledge base, the technology that we will sell to the world to replace existing technologies. They will give us the technology to use light to replace heat and electricity. They'll give us the technologies to use ammonia for hydrogen and storage. They'll give us the technologies for decarbonizing our entire global industry because they don't know they can't do it yet. And all of the scientific research and experience over the last hundreds and hundreds of years show the new ideas come from the brightest minds with the youngest and the cleanest minds. So what are we doing in this country? We should be going after that. We should double our scientific research tax credits, but not for companies spending $100 million, for the little guys. The fastest growing industries in knowledge are startups run by one person. And 3 years later, their companies, what? Oh, they did a first round, an ABC round. They got a 50 million market cap. 3 years later, they got $1 billion market cap. Again, we don't encourage nimble knowledge. We encourage sustaining the status quo in this country. And that's, in my opinion, the biggest mistake. And that has been the greatest lesson and the greatest benefit we've learned doing research at Georgia Tech, doing research at Colorado State, doing research at the University of Florida. Same time, we do university research at Oshawa and the University of Toronto. Because the great inventions are going to come from there. And that 17-year window that it used to take to get from the lab to the marketplace is down to 7 years.
We're chatting with Greg Vezina, CEO of Hydrofuel, about great ideas, new ideas come from young people. Fascinating. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Fascinating conversation with Greg Vezina tonight. He's talked about his company that he's CEO of, Hydrofuel, two technologies that they've got. One that can convert hydrogen into ammonia, and another one that can convert hydrocarbons into their component pieces, hydrogen, ammonia, carbon, etc. And he's also really said some intriguing things in regards to where new ideas come from, young people at university and their postdocs, and that we should be bringing them to Canada to contribute to our society. So I gotta, just in our last couple of minutes, Greg, ask you to take a big step back. Mark Carney, our new Prime Minister, has said he wants us to be an energy superpower. We've talked a little bit about transmission lines across the country, and you don't think that's a good idea. Daniel Smith, the Premier of Alberta, is demanding that we create pipelines to the West Coast, liquefied natural gas, maybe pipelines to Churchill. What do you think we need to do in Canada to be an energy superpower?
Oh, great question. Thank you, Brian. I think we need to adopt an all of the above strategy. And I mean all of the above. And we've got to stop deciding who the winners and losers are based on politics entirely. Okay. Different regions in different parts of this country have different assets that are more value added within their own economy than they are shipped across the country or out of Canada to be turned into a more value add product. The notion of building Churchill, or not Churchill, but it's an example in the East Coast, the idea of building Site C in BC, the Peace River Hydro Dam, so that we have electricity to liquefy natural gas for export instead of just burning the damn natural gas and not building this giant transmission line. I mean, what is the math on that? Well, the math is you've got a natural gas line to where you can generate electricity, and natural gas is very efficient, and Canadian natural gas is the lowest carbon gas in the world. So we would produce the lowest gas generated electricity on the planet Earth. But no, we're going to take the Site C electricity. So we're going to build two energy corridors to get the job done.
So ship natural gas by pipeline and burn it closer to where it's burn it and convert it to electricity closer to where it's needed. And you still get the same amount of carbon into the atmosphere, but you save energy through that transportation process.
Well, actually, you get less carbon in the atmosphere because you didn't build those transmission lines. Remember, we're talking about life cycle. You need steel, you need cable, you need, bulldozers to clear the land. Okay, so again, a single utilization to end use. We utilize the infrastructure we have as much as possible to get to end use. And then at end use, we do our improvements. So you try to do pre-combustion, and we're talking about combustion right now. You do pre-combustion mitigation and you do post-combustion mitigation. Look,
so what about a pipeline to the West Coast and a liquefied natural gas plant to ship liquefied natural gas to Asia?
Yeah, tomorrow. We have the lowest content gas in the world. Why wouldn't we ship Canadian natural gas instead to let ship Venezuelan bunker oil or coal? I mean, it's math. Do the friggin' math.
So Daniel Smith is right. We need a pipeline to the West Coast. What about a pipeline to the East Coast?
We need one there too. Absolutely. Why are we importing oil from Saudi Arabia for the refineries on the East Coast? And we're shipping ours to Texas at a 20% discount price. Like, I'm sorry. Do the math. Get some grade 5 math and science students in. Appoint them as the Minister of Energy and Environment for a
Okay,
week.
what about these people that say, we're at peak energy, peak use of hydrocarbons, putting all this money into these massive pipelines just doesn't make economic sense?
Well, okay, first two answers. The IEA came out last week and said we're not going to reach peak oil till at least 2050. With data center demand and heating and air conditioning demand, 1 trillion terawatts, whatever, of fossil energy invested in last year, double the amount invested in renewables. Renewables still haven't taken any larger chunk out of the total energy supply because demand is growing faster than we can build renewables. It's math. And again, every time you use a renewable, you build a gas plant.
What? Every time you use a renewable, you build a gas plant?
You cannot replace baseload power with renewable energy unless you build 3 times as much and massive battery storage or a gas plant. Look, we're paying a fortune for renewable energy in Ontario. We're hiding billions of dollars of costs from our monthly bill because industry will scream if they have to pay the real cost of electricity, as has happened in other jurisdictions. And we're then paying billions more to store it for 4 hours in these battery plants. For 4 hours.
Greg Vezina, really appreciate you joining us tonight. So to become an energy superpower, we got to think about life cycle cost. We got to get government out of the way of picking winners and losers and open up to free enterprise. We got to stop subsidizing old technologies and allow the new technologies to be competitive. We got to build pipelines to the East Coast and the West Coast and liquefied natural gas plants and not build big, long transmission corridors. Is that correct?
And build renewable where it works. Those wind farms in Atlantic Canada, et cetera, you can create massive amounts of energy. The thing is, use them there. Don't try and ship them across the country. Use it where you make it.
Greg Vezina, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
We're going to take a break, and I'm going to come back after a break with a couple of my own comments on this topic. Stay with us, everybody.